Shut up and sit down.
The northern suburbs of Perth are a massive housing development made out of the sand dunes. Most of the houses are freestanding dwellings on quarter-acre blocks that are rarely over a single story. The roads are well designed and funnel away traffic from the local streets, making them peaceful enough for the kids to play on. This place will be similar to the western suburbs of Sydney, except here they have beautiful beaches, idyllic public spaces, and the people are polite and respectful to one another. All the locals here have beautiful homes, a high level of contentment, and the only drawbacks that I see are the limited employment constrained to rural construction, government and tourism sectors. I walked around and saw many beautiful homes along a vast coastline. Further inland is a series of lakes that have been turned into sizable public spaces. I was impressed that they didn't just drain these floodlands for additional housing. I could still hear the sounds of the frogs, signalling that they hadn't destroyed the natural ecology by pouring chemicals or sewage into the stormwater. It's also interesting to see that many of the flora and fauna that I'm used to on the east, such as the paperback trees, rabbits and ravens, are all still here, as well as some unique species like the many flowering shrubs and the black swans. The disjointed lakes are a missed opportunity to create an interconnected cycle, scooter and walkway through this part of the city. So in a way, my transit through Western Australia has reminded me of my childhood. The food choices here are fairly dismal, as there's only really choices between the local fish and chip shop and the pub. Cafes are making their inroads, but I'm missing the freshly cooked handmade noodles and steamed buns that I can get almost anywhere in Sydney. But on the upside, Perth is an example of what happens when the government spends their tax dollars on public infrastructure and not just wages to grease the palms of their mates. At the northern tip of Perth's suburbs is a place called Two Rocks, and I had to go there if only to find out if there was actually two rocks. And as I'm sure you're all guessing, there are actually two rocks, and a King Neptune statue as well. Westward is Yangchep National Park. It's a very sculptured park with an enclosed area for koalas and another for kangaroos with many wood ducks wandering around. It's somewhat similar to Lane Cove National Park back in Sydney, where it was originally privately owned and used as a natural theme park before reverting back to public ownership. A lot of the original built infrastructure still remains, such as a man-made lake and caves, but there is no paddle boats or canoes to hire. I don't know if it was COVID or possibly winter, but many of the attractions looked to be waiting for better days. The lakes were all drained, and the main attractions this time of year, being the spring wildflowers, were not even mentioned in the brochure. Getting to Geraldton meant that I finally crossed across from the population bubble on the east coast to the population bubble on the west. Finally, the hop to Perth was only a 4-hour ride. For the first time in a long time, I was able to check out of my accommodation at a respectable time of 9 AM. Also, there was ample food and petrol along the road, such that I didn't have to manage my speed to make sure I could get to the next fuel stop. I also had plenty of time to stop and explore interesting things along the route. Being roughly the halfway point, Cervantes was a leisurely 2-hour ride. I had a choice of multiple places for lunch, and Google recommended the Seabreeze Cafe. The local petrol station also had a fairly respectable coffee machine, and it was a far cry from the deep fryer and $7 meat pies that I'd become accustomed to while crossing the top end. The beaches have the most amazing white sands, and from the lookout I could only imagine everybody swimming and playing in the shallows during the summer months. Most of the food available was just stereotypically English, with a choice between a burger or fish and chips, but I just had to try the local specialty of crayfish. Indian Ocean Drive goes through both a nature reserve and the Namberg National Park. There are massive white sand dunes that I just had to stop and admire. I wanted to go for a short hike through one of them, but I had to settle with flying the drone instead, as the shrubs beside the road grow so thick with the additional runoff from the rain. The pinnacles are rock formations of fossilised tree stumps. It's interesting to think why the sand levels would remain the same depths over the extended period of time, and for these stones to be uncovered at pretty much the same level as they grew. Riding along the highway, there are still plenty of dead kangaroos on the side of the road. Emus still walk out onto the highway, and there are bozos in four-wheel drives that nearly kill everyone rather than slowing down. I'd hate to think what would happen if this emu kept crossing the road, and I don't want to pick on four-wheel drives all over again, because here in WA almost everybody is driving one, and you'd be generalising about the entire population. The rare bozo and city cars still exist, although they're just less frequently than the ones in four-wheel drives. The accommodation is very comfortable. 2 weeks in the northern suburb of Sorrento, and like most people here, I'm just a short walk away from the beach. It's a very familiar place to anyone who has lived in a suburb of any other major Australian city. Youth gather in the local mall for an impromptu car show. Kids play aerial ping pong into the twilight, and the tranquility of the birds fighting for supremacy of the backyard is only broken up by the sounds of aeroplanes in the distance. New waterproof boots and a helmet visor for me, and new rubber for the bike. After asking 4 previous motorcycle mechanics to give the chain some TLC, Peter from Bikes finally pointed out that tensioning a chain on a single-sided swing arm is different from every other motorcycle I'd ever rode. Thanks to Peter, I'm now back on ZR rated tyres, and I don't know if it was the tyre wear, but the vibration through the handlebars have also gone. I can't recommend these guys enough. The only lingering problem now is the ding in the muffler, and I still need to find a mechanic in Adelaide. Comment your suggestions below. Starlink, Big Town NBN and Vodafone are all still working well. It's been a good time to catch up on those new releases like Top Gun Maverick and the classics like Dread. I hate to say this, but the West Coast is to the East Coast, as your left hand is to your right. They are somewhat the same but different as well. Western Australia lacks anything like the Great Dividing Range, making the state fairly flat. The golden beaches in the east have been replaced with white sand, the sugarcane has been replaced with wheat, and the trees have been replaced with shrubs. In as much as I was expecting WA to be nearly a different country, it's still very much Australia. I was sort of expecting that being so far away from the rest of the country, Perth may have evolved into its own unique way, but after living here for the first 2 weeks, I can only say that they've had the opportunity to learn a lot from the mistakes over east and have capitalised on those lessons, but not made any major changes. I can also was expecting to find more Indigenous people here, as I haven't sighted any plaques acknowledging the state-sanctioned slaughter of entire tribes like I found in Sydney. I haven't really spent enough time here to really say whether justice in Western Australia is reserved for those well-connected inbreds like it is for the east of the country. Next stop is 2 more weeks in the south of the city, where I should be able to explore more places like Fremantle and around Swan River. Perth is a very spread out city where most people live predominantly on the coast. I have 2 more weeks to have a good look around before finishing off my taxes and moving further down the coast. Also, I have nearly twice the amount of followers on Google Maps than I do YouTube. If anyone has any idea why there are followers on Google Maps, then please comment below. So thanks for following my adventures around Australia, and remember to go out there and do something to enjoy your day.